Welcome to another episode of Design Sketching 101, a video series that I'm using to help improve your confidence, to show you the benefits of design sketching, and to really help develop your understanding of how it can be utilized in drawing anything. For a change today, we're not going to be drawing anything that's man-made, we're going to be drawing from nature. And I thought a very good place to start would be drawing birds, and more specifically parrots, and I'll try and explain why. So I've pulled up an iPad with a couple of images that are quite nice to look at, that we can get some reference from. And the reason why I chose parrots is for one very specific reason, is that they are simple to draw if you understand the way the head is laid out. The head makes up the bird, okay? So let me try and find something that's pretty characteristic. Okay, we have a macaw. I think that's what this is. So we have, if we look at it from a broader perspective without any pixelation, what you really need to look at to understand how to draw a parrot's head is the characteristic beak and the eye. And really it's the only thing that defines the bird is the beak and the eye placement. And depending on that, it really dictates the kind of bird you'll be drawing. And notice how every bird has that similar aesthetic. I mean, if you look at it from a side profile, we can see. So I think this is going to be a very good starting point, actually. Let's use this parrot specifically as the starting point for our drawing. So we're going to use it as some kind of reference. Okay? I hope you'll be able to see it okay. I'm just going to put it a little bit off the camera. I need some space to rotate the page. So as per usual, we're going to be using a Pro Marker pen. This time, this one's in rose pink with a chisel tip end. The reason why I use this is because if I make a mistake, it's up to me to correct it. It also allows you to see a lot more of the image as I'm drawing it out. And it's a very nice method of being free and flowing and not necessarily too critical of your work. It adds a little bit of color. And so let's start. As per usual, I haven't warmed up at all prior to this, so we'll see how it goes. Question is, should we be drawing the parrot from the left or the right? I think this should be quite a good side. Okay, let's start. So, we're going to draw the profile. I think... No, wait, I've got a better idea. We start by drawing some kind of full... I didn't plan this through very well. No, let's just draw the head. Head profile today. Okay, so what I would do when tackling this, it's a side view, which is very useful, it helps us a lot. I would start by boxing in something, giving some kind of reference that allows us to work in and around the drawing. So some kind of box frame might help. Of course, this is an instructional video, so it's not necessarily going to be a work of art, but we're going to see how it goes. Okay, first off, the beak is the most prominent feature of the bird, so we're going to have to try and work around that. So firstly, let's start by drawing a profile for the head. It's always a good start. So nice and free, lock your elbow, free up your arms, do a bit of ghosting to warm up. Okay, we have semblance of a head. Now immediately we notice how the head arches back, so I suggest you then follow suit and arch your drawing backwards too. Now notice how rough and loose this drawing is. It's all going to be improved very soon. Next step I would say would be to maybe split the head in a place where you think the beak is going to be connected. So I would suggest down the middle about there. Okay? Oh, wow. Really committing to your drawings. Okay, so around there. So what we have now is a connection point for the beak to connect, and now, once again, goes another circle and pull some kind of reference in. I mean, this doesn't look like a parrot, but as we start developing and refining the drawing, it'll start making a bit more sense. Okay, next step, we can add the chest, which is going to be running down about here. Okay, so it's a good start. So we have some reference. Now, what I normally suggest most people do is start by, refining your lines, getting some understanding of where everything's sitting, And once you feel quite confident with that, you can then start by rounding off edges and giving it a bit more flair. So what we're going to do now is create a small little arc and follow that beak profile down. Now notice the beak is quite tall, and I've already seen what the error is of my drawing, which is that it's too arced forward. So we're going to pull it down a little bit steeper. Parrots have very distinct beaks that are very steep in profile. Okay, so we're going to ignore that line and refine this one now. Now notice how there is an immense amount of space between the top of the head and the beak. So what we're going to do is divide up where we know that the underside of the lip meets with the corner of the beak. So I'd say it's about here. So we can draw a vertical line that's some kind of reference. And from there, we pull from the underside to complete the underside of the mouth, and we then join up the part of the beak that connects to the top. Okay, getting somewhere. Now I'm looking at my reference image and I've noticed that this part of the beak can actually be a lot longer. See, like with anything, design sketching and otherwise, it's all about playing with your proportions, and if you make mistakes, it's up to you to correct them. It's a very good philosophy to stand by. Okay, before we get into too much detail, let's just complete this beak. Now you notice there's almost like a diagonal line that cuts the head. So what we're going to do is pull a reference line down and add a little bit of flair by adding an arc and then completing it on the inside. Okay, and similarly we can do the same underneath, where we can add a little bit of indentation for the mouth and some kind of arc that runs around the back. Now this is a very distinct part which I haven't covered yet, which is the forehead of the bird. Let's just add a few little feathery tufts. Okay, that's looking a bit better. Something I didn't highlight, which is important, is the bird's forehead, and that really makes up a parrot's head. Notice that the head isn't exactly circular. It's circular up until about this point, but then it actually flattens out. So what we can do is just draw a horizontal line or a semi-horizontal diagonal line and see how that looks, and play with how the forehead might connect up with the back side of the head. Okay, that's an interesting start. Maybe it can be improved. Like I've said in most of my videos, design sketching is all about playing. So what I'm hoping on doing is making a series of videos like this that attacks drawings of all kinds, because once you've understood the principle of design sketching and you incorporate that into the way you work drawing in general, it'll help you immensely in the future. Okay, so we have something. Round off the beak. Okay, the next step is the eye placement. Now that's very important because the eye makes up the bird. So before I get into that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the actual outline of the face. Now, of course, I'm using this image as a reference, which helps, and it's something I highly suggest you do as well when it comes to drawing. And just looking at this beak, I'm still not happy with the profile of it, so I'm going to go over it again, do another run, and round it off. Okay, so the head profile, what we're going to do as we're following the image is pull a couple of lines down for the underside of the head, some kind of rounded profile. Okay, now we can play with horizontal and vertical lines. Notice my marker pen is running out of ink. I do realize that, so some kind of diagonal line down. It's a good start. And since this is a drawing that we went into without warming up, it's a favorable start to begin with. So now we draw the eye placement. Now if we look at the drawing, we notice that the eye is situated about here, which we'll try and emphasize now. Let's see what happens. Okay, that's not bad. It's pretty good. Notice that I ghosted in the drawing before actually executing and putting the pen down on paper. Now this looks really messy, and that's because I haven't refined the drawing up. So let's do that quickly. Let me just emphasize certain things by going over it a bit darker. Hopefully this marker will last throughout the exercise. Okay. So the head profile is about there. Really trying to just add some thickness to these lines I've drawn. And now we can see, if we squint our eyes, just need to make this a bit darker. If we squint our eyes, we can see that there is a profile of a parrot that's showing itself. That looks a lot better than expected. Okay, maybe we might want to give it a little bit of feathery detail along the ridges to hide some of our lines that we've developed. Okay, and now it's simply a process of drawing in a pupil. Now, something else that I want to explain is what an image can do but a drawing has to do is you need to, especially for eyes, you need to have some kind of reference to a reflection. You need to have that little spot of reflection somewhere. So what I like to do as a rule of thumb, once I've drawn in the pupil, is to just draw a little oval in front of it, and that gives you the impression that it does have a bit of reflection behind it. Okay. It's really simple. If you look at this drawing now, and we can tell in some way that this is a parrot, simply because of the beak placement and the eyeball. Those two elements have made up the drawing entirely. I just wish this pen was darker. Ugh. Frustrating. Okay, nice. So this is more of an illustration exercise, but it's something you can use for any method, and I hope to emphasize that over the next few sessions. So what we might want to do is add a few little tufts to give it the impression that it's got some feathering on the top. I mean, look at that. That profile is very acceptable to being something that looks like a parrot. Okay. We can add the wing in detail, which doesn't take that much effort. It's just a flow. So really, this exercise has been glorified copying, but it has taught you a simple principle of just what I started with was just boxing off the idea of where the head was going to be. Started with drawing a circle, some kind of reference circle after knowing where my dividing line was for the beak, and we just took it from there. Granted, it's not the neatest drawing, but it's a start, and it's a way of developing your understanding of proportion and scale. Now what we can do to end this drawing off, and this is what I wanted to do in the beginning, which was to highlight a full profile of the bird, which should be a lot simpler. Nice if I found the same breed of parrot in a full view. We don't. Let's keep looking. Maybe we'll find something. It's a very, very pretty bird. I love parrots. They are quite exceptional creatures. Okay, we're going to have to find something similar. So I'm guessing around the beak profile is the most important part of the bird. So if we can find something that has a similar beak, it's a similar species in a way. Apologies for the delay. Okay, let's just use this as a reference. Okay, this looks like some kind of oil painting of a similar breed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use the rest of this page as some kind of reference to drawing a full profile of the bird, and it shouldn't take too long. So what we can start off with is, should we even start with reference lines? No, we're going to go straight into it. So work from the top down in this instant, because again, the head seems to be the defining factor with the parrot. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So what we can do is now attack it by knowing where the head is fitted on the neck, and the head is looking away. So what we can do is we can draw a reference, which is something like an oval. Okay, that's a start. And in a similar fashion, we can draw another oval that's going downwards. Okay, now maybe the proportions are wrong, maybe it's out, but we now have the means to fix those mistakes. Once we've done those two little ovals, I hope you can see them okay, we can start by refining the head, which is about there. And immediately you can see that there's something that's coming out of the profile of the head itself. We might want to make the chest a little bit bigger and then taper it downwards, which is pretty simple. And now we can add the defining characteristic of the beak, which would just run down and over, arc inwards, maybe add the underside of the jaw. Okay, it's not a work of art, but it gets the point across. And I think that's a very important thing to indicate, is that this part of the drawing, at least, is not supposed to be the detailed part of the drawing. This is supposed to be almost like an indication for the observer to know that this is the profile of the bird that you've just drawn. And I think it's very valuable. It's like a composition, you know, it's composition sketching. Okay, next we can just add the tail and refine this up a little bit more. The tail would just be pulled straight downwards, maybe a bit of arc to it. Of course, I'm not going to be changing up my medium, so yeah, round the wing off. The wing starts about here and wraps around and down. And like I've said a couple of times, I think in this video, this is all about freeing up yourself and not really worrying too much about proportion and scale and if it looks good or not. This exercise is all about playing with the pen on the page. Okay, I'm just going to draw a kind of horizontal line to indicate that it's sitting on something. And, you know, if we had more time, we would go into refining the details. But what we have is something that is pretty characteristic of a parrot illustration. Or when I say illustration, I would say, you know, design, sketch. So what I'm going to do over the next few minutes before this marker pen really decides to run out on me completely is to just refine out these zones that I've highlighted. So again, the most important takeaway from this exercise of sketching a parrot, and I'd say most birds, is the eye. The eye of the parrot is the thing that really defines, the eye and the beak. Those two elements really define the shape of the bird. Once you have that down, you're pretty covered when it comes to sketching it out. And this element is something that is used just to highlight to the observer that that's what the bird looks like in its natural habitat. It's a little bit sketchy of an exercise, but let me just refine some more areas. Anyway, I hope you've learned something from this exercise. You've taken something away. And if you're interested in any more, I'd be very interested in hearing your comments. And I'd love to do a series revolving around this, specifically focusing on design sketching from nature, you know, looking at plants and animals and trees and whatnot. So, thank you very much for joining me in another episode of Design Sketching 101. Hope you've taken something away from it, and I hope to see you in the next one.